This is Rugby Roundup. Coming up, analysis from a dramatic night at Damson Park, highlights and analysis of the Moseley Bees clash, and we speak to Richard Hill ahead of Worcester's trip to Nottingham. Hello and welcome to Rugby Roundup. I'm Chrissy Savas and I'm in our Fort Dunlop studios, joined by rugby correspondent Brian Dick. Hello, Brian.
Hi, Christina.
Well, it was a close encounter between Bees and Rotherham. What was your verdict on the match?
Well, it was extremely close and probably closer than it should have been. Overall, my abiding emotion was one of irritation at the end of it. It is a source of frustration to me, and no doubt even more so to the Bees coaches and players, that they can be so good and so potent for 20 minutes and for one game, and then so poor as they were against Moseley. This lack of consistency. Must have those boys down there bashing their heads feeling as though they're bashing their heads against brick wall, because we saw last night that they are a good team, or they have it within themselves to be a good team. But what we don't see week in, week out is that they're a good team week in, week out. They're just hopelessly inconsistent, and as great as it is to see them win, it just underlines how frustrating they are when they fall short as they tend to do every other week, or 2 weeks in 3.
Let's focus on some positives. There were some cracking tries in the game.
There absolutely were, and they weren't brilliant for the first half. The line out was malfunctioning quite heavily, and they weren't getting they're falling under par for some of the pressure that they put on. But in the second half, it just seemed to calm down. They were holding onto the ball. They weren't forcing the offloads. Samisi Tailava scored a couple of good tries. For me, that underlines what an error it was not to start him against Moseley. He is their talismanic player, certainly in the pack. When he functions, Bees tend to function. He scored a couple of good tries, one from short yardage, and another one which was underlining what I'm saying about the composure that Bees had in attack. Bees pushed Rotherham off a scrum ball. And then the two centres went into the 22, and instead of looking for that pass or trying to kick that wasn't on or something like that, they just went to ground with the ball. They were patient, and there was acres of space out wide for Samisi to go past his man. It just looks so easy, and when they play like that, they do make it look easy, because when you play properly, it is pretty straightforward. Let's be honest.
And there's some jubilant scenes at the end, weren't there?
There were. It's basically because of what happened at Moseley. They needed a response to what happened last Saturday. Psychologically, I've maybe started to think, actually, having said I don't think they will go down, I start to think, well, actually, maybe they will. Maybe they might go down. So poor were they at Bilsey Common. So to have, so soon afterwards got a shot in the arm and a bit of self-belief again, it was very good for them. Are they going to get out of trouble? I think with Worcester and Bedford to play in their final 2 matches, you've got to say it's pretty unlikely that they're going to escape the bottom 4. Moseley, maybe we'll go on to them in a little bit. They'll be that. I think they do have a realistic shot, but Bees probably will be bottom 4. So for them, it's all about getting some wins and getting some momentum ahead of the playoffs, and they have to do it again on Sunday against Bristol. They've got, to put 2 performances together, which is something that they haven't been managed to do so far this season.
Well, you mentioned Moseley there, and it could be different for them. They could get out of trouble, couldn't they?
Yeah, they could. This weekend will be will go a long way to deciding whether that happens. They're away at Plymouth. Now they are, where are they? They are 9 points behind Plymouth at the moment. If they win, and probably not going to win with a try bonus, let's be honest. But if they win, they get to within 4 or 5 points of Plymouth, with Rotherham at home and Esher away in the last 2. Now, there's a chance they could catch Albion. What they need to do is they need to catch Bristol as well. Now, Bristol have got 32 points. Bristol have got Bees, Plymouth and Rotherham in their final 3 matches. So you'd have to say that you'd expect Bristol to pick up at least 5 points from those 2 games. So they do need to win all 3 of their games, I think, Moseley, to stand any chance of getting out of it. And even then, it might not be enough. But with Plymouth away this weekend, Rotherham at home the following Friday, and then finishing up at Esher, they are 3 winnable games. Will they win all 3? Maybe not, but they are 3 winnable games. And whilst I don't think we'll get out of it, Moseley just might, because they as we know, they've won their last 3, including events last Saturday.
So let's just look back at that derby game last week between Bees and Moseley. Talk us through that.
Yeah, well, it was very much a game of 2 halves. Moseley were pretty ordinary. They had pressure in the first half, but their problems finishing things off came back to haunt them again in that first half. In the second, were Moseley good or were Bees bad? Probably a little bit of both, or a lot of both. Bees lost 2 balls inside their own 22 from positions that you shouldn't be conceding turnover ball, and Moseley scored 2 tries, 2 very good tries. They were well executed. But then Bees are points down, and they start forcing the game, and they start looking for silly offloads that aren't there, and Moseley just harvested the points off Bees' mistakes. That said, Moseley were pretty good. They were clinical in that second half, and because they put the pressure on Bees defensively, that's where the turnovers and the errors started to come, and it was a little bit like watching them a couple of years ago when they had Jack Adams and Dan Norton in the side, where the defence would put the pressure on, and Adams and Norton would scoop up loose balls and run them the length of the pitch. I'm not suggesting that anything like playing at that sort of level, but it was reminiscent. It showed that the blueprint does still work against certain opponents. So it was a very good win for Moseley, and nice to see Chris Bichet, who's rebuilding his career, get a couple of tries. And he could be a very important player for Moseley in his final few games.
Well, now let's move on to Worcester, and they got the win that they were looking for against Cornish Pirates, didn't they?
They did just about, yeah. It was, as you alluded to there, they went down there looking for a bit of revenge. Pirates had beaten them at 6 ways. They did win, 33-30. It maybe wasn't as convincing as Richard Hill would have liked. Pirates had a very healthy lead in the first half. But for me, it was all about Worcester. That game was. Worcester caused all their own problems, and that's when Pirates scored their points. And when Worcester played sensibly, once they kept it in the forwards, Pirates were pretty powerless, to be honest with you. There was that period at the start of the second half when Worcester's catch and drive was almost unstoppable, and that's what put them on track to victory. So, a good win for them. Maybe not. Certainly not a perfect performance, and Richard Hill will be looking at who he plays fullback, because Joey Carlisle, as we'll hear from Richard in a minute, Joey Carlisle didn't have a great game at fullback. Richard will tell us now he's not a fullback, which he isn't. But unfortunately, Worcester do need to play a fullback, and if it's not Carlisle, it needs to be Tom Arscott or Chris Pennell when he's fit. So. There are still very much lingering issues to be resolved for Worcester, although they seem to be rolling along nicely now.
Okay, well now let's hear from Richard Hill.
It's a little bit unfair putting Joe at 15. He's a very good 10, and I've wanted to put him in the team because he's a good player, and I think he ought to be in the team. But clearly, at fullback, it's not his best position. At 10, you're in the game all the time, and you're making constant decisions, constant defensive attack decisions. At fullback, you just got to come in and make the right decision every now and again, and it's not an easy mentally. It's not as easy to play fullback as it is perhaps 10 when you're involved the whole time. So I would think, to be fair to Joe, I won't put him at fullback now.
That's all we've got time for this week. Thanks for joining us, Brian. We'll be back next week with analysis of all those matches. Bye for now.